Hello and welcome to this video on punctuation, where I will be teaching you how to use the most basic punctuation marks such as full stops and commas, right through to the ones that people more commonly get wrong, like apostrophes and semicolons. So let's start by looking at the very basics of punctuation, the things that you'll need whether you're trying to write a tiny sentence or a large one. These are the fundamentals of punctuation that you'll need no matter what you're trying to write. Okay, so let's start with a very basic sentence. So you need to start with a capital letter and finish with a full stop. These sort of bookend your information, and this is what makes it a sentence essentially, the start and the end point that are the same for every single sentence regardless of how long it is. So I've given the example of "It is Tuesday today." Very simple sentence, starts with a capital letter, finishes with a full stop. Okay, so what if you want to take your writing up a notch from just the very basic sentence and you don't always want to use a full stop at the end of your sentence? Well, then as well as your basic sentence with a full stop, again, the same examples up of "It is Tuesday today," you can use either an exclamation mark or a question mark. So an exclamation mark will give your sentence more of sort of like a punchy ending, so it might seem more dramatic, more impactful. So exclamation mark example I've given is "It is Tuesday today," as if the person saying the sentence is really, really excited about the fact that it's Tuesday, as if it's a big deal. Or you could use a question mark to finish it off, but only if what your sentence is being asked as a question. So I've given the example of "It is Tuesday today." So now you know how to use very basic punctuation. You know how to start and finish a sentence. But what if your sentence is slightly longer? So you might need to use more punctuation in the middle. Well, that's when you'd use the 4 types of punctuation you see below on the screen. So the comma, semicolon, colon, and ellipsis. So the comma is the first one that I will explain how to use. It works very, very similarly to a full stop, but it can be used to add more information to a sentence. So you'll see on the screen I have kept the basic sort of structure of capital letter, original sentence, full stop, but I have added in an extra 2 boxes which show comma and extra information. This is essentially just how you use a comma. So where you would put a full stop, you would instead put a comma and then your extra information before adding a full stop. So I've given the example of "It is Tuesday today, comma, so I have school." You've added extra information. The sentence still makes sense without the extra information, but the comma has allowed you to add it, but still allows you to read it with ease, so you don't have to struggle for breath to get to the end of the sentence. Okay, so the next piece of punctuation is the semicolon. So this works very, very similarly to a comma, in that you have capital letter, your original sentence, your piece of punctuation, your extra information, and then your full stop finally at the end. But the semicolon can be used in the same way as the comma, but in a more sophisticated way. So, for example, "It is Tuesday today, semicolon, I have school." It's a very similar example to the comma, but you'll notice that with the comma, my example is "It is Tuesday today, so I have school." When you're using a semicolon, it removes the need for the conjunction of "so" or whatever other conjunction you're using. And this is because to use a semicolon, both the part of the sentence before and after your semicolon must make sense on their own. This is not the case of a comma. So semicolon is a little bit trickier to use because of that, because a lot of people think you can use them in the exact same way, but that is when you know to use a semicolon and not a comma. Next, we'll move on to the colon. So we've looked at semicolons and now we're looking at colons. So this is the similar looking punctuation mark, but with 2 dots rather than a dot and a comma. So a colon is essentially used at the start of a list. That's the most basic way of putting it. So you'll see I've given the example of "It is Tuesday today, comma, so I have," using the example from the comma sentence. and then I've used a colon before listing the subjects that this person has: maths, science, and art. So a colon marks the start of a list. Okay, so now moving on to ellipsis or ellipses. Now, these are used very similarly to the punctuation marks I've just showed you, but have a slightly different effect. So they show the progression of a sentence or give a bit more information. So I've given the example of "It is Tuesday today, ellipsis, I have school." So you're saying it is Tuesday today and then the implications of what you've just said. But what if you still want to add even more information to your sentence? Then you'd use things such as brackets and speech marks. So much like commas, colons, and semicolons, brackets can be used to add more information to a sentence. So they work in a very similar way. So your extra information would come after your punctuation mark. But in the case of brackets, rather than your extra information coming after one punctuation mark, you sandwich it between two, as brackets come in pairs. So you would do your capital letter, your original sentence, first part of your brackets, extra information, second part of your brackets, then your full stop. So you sandwich your extra information within the pair of brackets. I've given the example of "It is Tuesday today," brackets, annoyingly. So the sentence must make sense with or without the bit in brackets. You're adding it just as extra information. So the bit within the brackets might be a full sentence in its own right, but the sentence must make sense if you take the brackets out. So "It is Tuesday today," full stop, still makes sense. You just add the bit in brackets to give a bit more information. Okay, so speech marks, much like brackets, come in pairs. So you would again do capital letter, your original sentence, first part of your speech marks, extra information, second part of your speech marks, then your full stop. So your extra information is again sandwiched between two parts of punctuation which go together to complete the set of punctuation. However, speech marks are a little bit more challenging than brackets because you can use them in so many different ways and you can order your sentence in so many different ways. So I've given 3 examples because you can rearrange the sentence many different ways with speech marks. So for example, we have Laura said, speech marks, "It is Tuesday today." So your speech is at the end of your sentence. You could also do Laura said, "It is Tuesday today," to John. Your speech is now in the middle of your sentence. Or you can put your speech right at the very start. "It is Tuesday today," said Laura. So providing the part within the speech marks is always what's being said, you can rearrange a sentence with speech marks in many different ways. But speech on its own does not form a sentence. It's not grammatically correct. So speech marks can be used in a sentence but can't be used as a sentence. And now a little fun fact to take you on to the final part of our video, which is that did you know that the most misused punctuation mark is the apostrophe? So I'm now going to talk you through how to use the apostrophe, as this is the one that is most commonly got wrong by people of all ages. So there is 2 different ways you can use apostrophes, which are for possession or instead of a missing letter. But a lot of people, because they don't know how to use apostrophes properly, just see S's on the end of words and think you always need an apostrophe, but this is not the case. So firstly, apostrophes for possession. So put simply, this is when you use an apostrophe to show that someone owns something. So for example, "Have you seen Sarah's new kitten?" You'd use an apostrophe here to show that it is the new kitten belonging to Sarah. Or in the second example, "Tuesday is Sarah's favourite day of the week." Now while Sarah doesn't own Tuesday, it's still the favourite day of Sarah. So she's still in possession of a favourite thing. So you'd still use an apostrophe, even though that one's more metaphorical than in the first example when she has a literal cat. So I've given you a little bit of a challenge underneath as to would you need an apostrophe anywhere in the sentence? So the sentence is, Sarah writes poems about her friends. So pause the video if you need a little bit more time and see if you can work out if you would need an apostrophe in that sentence, and if so, where it would go. The answer to the question is no, you wouldn't need an apostrophe in that sentence. Now the second use for apostrophes instead of a missing letter. So you would use these in examples such as when you would turn do not into don't, or could not into couldn't, or they are into there, or there is into theirs. So when you push the two words together, you take out a letter. And this letter that you've taken out is then replaced by an apostrophe. So for example, in do not becoming don't, the apostrophe replaces the letter O. Or in they are, the apostrophe replaces the letter A, or in there is, the apostrophe replaces the letter I. And to finish off this video and very quick run through on how to use apostrophes and all the other types of punctuation, I'll leave you with a quick do's and don'ts of using apostrophes. So you should use an apostrophe to show possession or in place of a missing letter. And you should not use an apostrophe to show plurals. So for example, cats would not need an apostrophe because you're just showing that there's multiple cats. There's nothing belonging to the cats, you're just showing that there's multiple of them. So you don't need an apostrophe. And you also should not use an apostrophe just every time you see the letter S.